Hey folks, this is going to be our last video for the semester. Next week we're just doing the last assignment for the semester that'll get posted in the discussion board. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of wrap us up as far as videos this week. Um, in this last video, I really wanted to address Reconstruction. The book, again, I think I say this in a lot of videos, the book does a really good job of playing through Reconstruction and exactly what happens, with the Reconstruction amendments, the 13th Amendment granting freedom for enslaved people, the 14th Amendment granting citizenship for everybody. For the most part, and Native Americans are not included in that. The 14th Amendment also granting equal protection under the law, which will be a tremendous. That equal protection clause is going to be huge moving forward, as well as the 15th Amendment. 15th Amendment granting voting rights, sort of, to African American males. Basically, though, it does say states, local governments are not allowed to deny African American males the right to vote based on race, creed, previous condition of servitude. So you can't deny this group of people the right to vote based on these things, but very quickly states and local governments are going to figure out, well, we can come up with a whole bunch of other things and deny people the right to vote on that stuff. So um, then the book also takes a pretty good look at the stripping away of those rights in various means, um, through the rest of the chapter there. But what I wanted to take a look at here is, sometimes, and it's probably kind of rare that you really dig into this, but there's sometimes an ongoing debate whether or not Reconstruction was in fact, a failure or a success. Um, and did it set out uh, and actually accomplish what all of this set out to do, which was to free African American enslaved people at the end of the Civil War in the South, as well as bring those people up to be citizens and to give them the same rights as everyone else, as whites primarily. So we kind of have a back and forth on that. And honestly, um, I think, and I think a lot of other historians kind of view Reconstruction, unfortunately, as a failure. And the reason being, out of the Reconstruction amendments, the only one that was really partially successful, and it wasn't even complete, unfortunately, was the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment abolishes slavery, but very quickly, the South is going to come up with some other means to roll that back as much as possible. The southern states are going to enact, the so-called Jim Crow laws, the black codes, uh, and these laws all keep African Americans, basically as second-class citizens, and as much as possible, they're literally going to be oppressed to the point where it's almost the same level as they experienced with slavery. It's slightly better, but it's really not a lot better though. 14th Amendment, granting citizenship for African Americans. Well, a lot of that's rolled back by Jim Crow laws as well. African Americans are not going to be permitted to testify against whites in court. You're going to see a whole litany of, again, Jim Crow laws that are going to apply to restrict the freedoms of African Americans there as well. The 15th Amendment, you can't deny African Americans the right, or African American males the right to vote based on race. And well, southern states are going to find other ways, largely, and some northern states do as well. But you know, we'll have literacy tests. And well, we have to apply literacy tests to everybody, but white voters, if they're tested at all, are going to get a very simple passage to read. Sometimes they'll just be told, "Hey, this is what this says. Repeat it back to me, and you can read." Yay! African Americans are going to be given very complicated sections of the Constitution sometimes to read, and that stuff. If you've ever tried to sit down and read the Constitution, some of that stuff is pretty dense. Um, and so it's very unfair. Other states, um, some states will adopt what's called a grandfather clause. Well, you're allowed to vote only if your grandfather were allowed to vote. We're not, keep in mind, we're not basing this on race. Technically, we're not doing that, but white males, their grandfathers were allowed to vote at this time in 1870. African American males, well, their grandfathers in the South were primarily enslaved. Even if they were free, they were not permitted to vote. And so that gets rid of the African American vote. Um, and probably the biggest reason that Reconstruction failed is that it only lasted, I know this is going to sound weird, but it only lasted for 11 years. Think about today, even. This is 2019. We still have some serious problems with racism and stuff. It's not anywhere near as much as it was in the 1870s, but we still have problems with racists and stuff like that. Think about a group of people that was enslaved one day and were trying to get the rest of white society to accept them as equals in as short of time as 11 years. Reconstruction, honestly, for it to accomplish a lot of very much of anything, really needed to last a lot longer. As far as how much longer, though, I really have no idea how much longer it would have needed to last. But the primary reason it wasn't successful, it just didn't have time to start reversing a lot of those racist sentiments and stuff like that in the South, and really work to do a lot more uplift for the African American community, and to kind of get the white communities to let go of some of that stuff. But even then, though, Reconstruction was heavily resisted in the South, and so how long it would have taken it to work, who really knows? But 11 years was absolutely not long enough. But we also need to take a look at the other side of that. The Civil War lasted for 4 years, and then we're adding another 11 years. So we have 15 years total of American troops, mainly Northern troops, being stationed in the South, because the war required American troops to be deployed to the American South. But then after that, to enforce Reconstruction, American military troops had to be stationed in the South. This was a military occupation force. And, people rotated in and out and stuff, but, if we kind of look at this the way that currently, 2019, the way the United States is looking at Afghanistan, American troops were sent to Afghanistan very shortly after September 11th, 2001. And a lot of American troops are still there 18 years later. And there's a significant amount of weariness on the part of the American public. Hey, we need to bring these troops home. They have been over there for quite long enough. Well, Northern people have the same idea that, hey, we've had troops in the South for, at this point, 15 years, it's time to bring those troops home. And so there is a high degree of weariness. And so, the North as well was not interested in kind of continuing to pursue this program of Reconstruction. Many of them, honestly, hey, you've got these amendments there, the Southerners will surely obey the law. People don't obey the law unless they're kind of forced a lot of times. Sometimes they do, but sometimes we don't. But they felt like a lot of Northerners felt like, hey, these laws are in place. Southerners will obey them. It's time to bring these troops home, and so that's kind of the thing. So ultimately, unfortunately, Reconstruction was a failure, probably because it didn't last long enough. But I sadly don't have an answer on how long it should have lasted. It could have lasted for 50 years, and it may have had pretty close to the same impact. It just requires society to move ahead a little bit on that stuff, and society wasn't ready at that time, sadly. So, but that's kind of a downer. Sorry, I'm leaving you on that. Uh, but Reconstruction does have some positives, but it unfortunately has a lot of negatives. And so we'll cut there, and this will be our last video. I really, really hope you enjoyed the class. We do have that last assignment in the discussion board for week 16, and then we also have the final, so make sure you take care of those too. And we'll see you later. Thanks.